Hello, everybody, and welcome to Decoding the WSL, the podcast dedicated to the stats and facts in the WSL. I am your host, Sam Biccarino, and we're here today to discuss Game Week 2. There were 6 games that happened this weekend across Friday night and Sunday afternoon, and we've got 3 of us to talk through them all today. 3 of the regulars today, which hasn't happened for a while. First up, alongside me, we have Aerial Fantasy's Izzy Duddy. Izzy, did you almost faint for any goals this weekend?
No, I didn't actually watch a lot of them, which is probably good for my health. But glad to see a lot of goals scored. It's what we like to see.
Yeah, there were a lot of goals scored. And alongside as well, I say he's one of the regulars, but we've just established it's been about a month since he was last on the podcast. So I guess welcome back, Jacob.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's good to be back. I had a quick trip to the US, which was lovely. And my stat to open the podcast is, I believe this is the first podcast that I've been on following a Tottenham women victory. So it's good to be back.
Considering you've been on, hold on, because I've got it to hand. Considering this is your 21st appearance on the pod, that is a depressing stat. But well, if you didn't already know, Spurs won this weekend, but I'll run you through what else happened this weekend because we had 2 games on Friday night with City and Arsenal both eventually winning after coming back from behind against Brighton and West Ham respectively. No games on Saturday, so there were 4 on Sunday. London City Lionesses will be feeling more like Cubs as they are not having a roaring start to the season. WSL top scorer MLV Mallard netting twice in United's 5-1 away win. Leicester have been touted by many, including myself, as the team to finish bottom this season, but after defeating Liverpool, it's only goal difference keeping them outside of the top half of the table. 634 days since her last appearance, Sam Kerr scored her 100th Chelsea goal, the Blues winning 3-1 away at Villa, turning the tide after Salmon equalised for the home side. And those midday results meant that every team has now scored after just 2 games in the WSL this season. And then finally, there were chips being served at Goodison, most notably from new signing Tandberg, whose goal and assist helped Spurs claim their first ever win away at Everton. But we'll start with the games on Friday night. We'll kick off with Man City 2, Brighton 1. This one was at the Joy Stadium, 7:30 Friday evening. Frank Kirby giving the visitors the lead, but goals from Bunny Shaw and Hasegawa in the second half gave City the win. And it's a fourth win in a row, I should say, for City over Brighton. They've definitely got Brighton's number. But I think Brighton had sort of a decent run at it. It's one of those games that, if you lose by a goal, you're normally in the game a fair amount. And I think Brighton are looking all right this season. They've not had the best start with a draw and then a loss by a goal. But although the points aren't necessarily there, how do you think Brighton might fare this season? Because I think the underlying numbers and sort of the way they go about themselves might show that they might still have something to give.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those ones that maybe depends a bit on the teams around them as to where they finish up. I think generally they're looking all right, but I think attacking wise, they still need a bit more oomph about them if they're really going to start sort of locking in some victories. And I think, obviously Frank Kirby scored. They've got Michelle Hadjiman. We know they've got individual talent, but it's a bit odd. They had obviously quite a lot of people leave from the end of last season and haven't brought in an immense amount of players, which can be good, but perhaps maybe they're just kind of off to a slow start. I don't think we can write them off, but I kind of expect to see a little bit more from them. But it is only the second, nearly third game week, so anything could happen. But I think whether or not they kind of get to where they sort of want to be will, in some respects, at the moment, the way I see them playing, depend on their sort of rivals around them and how they do.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we've spoken before about this sort of pack of kind of 8 teams that we don't really know from 5th to 12th where everyone's going to finish. But I think Brighton they look quite good in this game, to be honest. They did get beaten on XG by 2.1 XG, I should say, and by 1.2 on XG on target. So in that sense, it was quite a fair result. But 55% possession for City is really low for them. I had a look back through some of the sort of other fixtures where they've had possession this low, and it's actually their lowest possession against a side outside the sort of top 4 of City, Arsenal, United and Chelsea. their lowest possession against a non-top four side in the WSL since a 1-0 win away at Leicester in October 2023, and their lowest in a home game since Villa in January 2023. So City not being afforded the same amount of same amount of time on the ball as they are usually sort of accustomed to. Jacob, obviously City have got a new manager this season. They're playing a little bit of a new system. Do you think it's partly due to that, or do you think it's just Brighton's style of play?
I think it's probably a mix of both. I think the thing that City will probably take from the match is that they've got the 3 points, which is probably the most important thing. Obviously, match day one was such a tough game against obviously a very, very good Chelsea side. So I think it's important to come into match day two, get those 3 points. And it's obviously disappointing that they went 1-0 behind. It was a quality goal from Kirby, but there was a really good comeback from City in the second half to score those 2 goals. And I thought it was really nice, especially to see both, to see Bunny Shaw on the score sheet, firstly, because obviously she was out the latter half of last season, and probably deserved, to be fair. She had 5 shots in the game, accumulating 0.7 XG. And in match day one against Chelsea, she also had 5 shots and accumulated 0.6 XG. So, I mean, technically that means she's underperformed because she's got 1.3 XG in 2 games and scored 1 goal. But she was quite unlucky against Chelsea, as I think she hit the bar and had a couple of shots saved by Hannah Hampton. But yeah, I think it's a good win for City. It's interesting about the possession stats. I mean, Brighton are quite a good side, so I think, so I think it will probably be the win that City will most be happy with. But yeah, 2.8 XG to Brighton's 0.7, and City had 19 shots. So I think the win was deserved.
Yeah, I think it was a fair result on XG. And well, we'll move on to the other game on Friday night, which also I think has, well, I don't know if fair is necessarily the right word with that one for XG, but that was obviously West Ham 1, Arsenal 5, also on Friday at 7:30. The Hammers opening the scoring thanks to Daphne van Domselaar somehow dropping the ball into her own net. Not quite sure what happened. I've heard it was quite windy, so maybe we can blame on that. But yeah, not a great attempt at catching across. But then goals from Marnham, Blackstenius, Caitlin Ford, and a double late on from Alessia Russo made it a sort of relatively easy routine win for Arsenal in the end. Beth Mead assisting the opener means that she is now the only player in the WSL with 3 assists after the first 2 games. And West Ham are now the only team to concede penalties in every game they've played this season, which is not a stat you would like to see. But 13 goals in the last 2 meetings between these 2 teams is quite a lot, and obviously 7 goals in that 4-3 last season at the Emirates, and now 5-1 here. They are teams that definitely like to put on a show, aren't they? But 5 goals conceded for West Ham in this game is quite a lot. It's from 2.3 XG from Arsenal, 2.8 expected goals on target. So a 2.2 underperformance for Megan Walsh in goal. Izzy, I wanted to ask you about this because obviously you are our sort of resident expert on anyone that's Polish. So Kinga Szemik has not been available for this game due to injury. She's expected to be back for the next game, which is Brighton away, but not 100% yet. But do you think she might be West Ham's missing piece to get those goals down, or do you think that she's just going to be something that will help but isn't necessarily going to fix the amount of goals they're shipping?
Yeah, I mean, I think they need her back. I don't think Megan Walsh has been great. Bless her. She's not really commanded in front of goal. And one thing that Szemik does very well is sort of come out and sort of cover the defenders as well when those like long crosses sort of come in. She catches a lot of high balls, and against a team like Arsenal as well, when you've got the likes of Beth Mead like just crossing them in, maybe that's kind of what you need. I think she also instills a lot of confidence in the defence, so maybe that's a sort of factor. For me, like I also just think West Ham have not been clinical enough in front of goal. Like we've seen really good performances from Asai, like we expect, but I think Martinez, Ueki, they've kind of been underperforming, and I think until that kind of front 3 sort of gels up a bit more, I think that's the real problem. Because as far as like when I look at West Ham and I watched them play against Spurs in the first game, you know, obviously they didn't take the win on that one, but you can kind of see these glimmers of potential, but they're just not kind of converting that into goals. And yes, Shemek can help sort of toughen up that defence, but to be honest, unless you're scoring, more than one, you're not, especially against a team like Arsenal, who are just going to cross it in until, they can get Stina Blackstenius or whoever on the end of it. You need to be able to kind of take it up the other end and score, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's not something West Ham did in this game. They only managed 4 shots, accumulating a combined 0.1 xG. They were really not the best chances. And none of those 4 shots were on target, so 0 expected goals on target in this game. Arsenal, by contrast, got 6 of their 17 shots on target, meaning that Walsh only made 1 save in goal. Stina Blackstenius, despite coming on at half-time, was the only player that took more than 1 shot on target in the game, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, West Ham, their goal was not technically a shot on target because it was a cross that ended up being an own goal, but it's a bit of a fluky one, but it is another one that Arsenal have conceded. And I did notice that Arsenal's only clean sheet in their last 9 competitive games was the Champions League final against Barcelona, which is a very surprising stat when you look at some of the teams that they've played
I feel like
against.
that's just Arsenal all over, isn't it? Like, only one clean sheet has to be Barcelona, no one else.
Yeah, they do, as they have done for years. They do well against the good teams, and they don't not necessarily struggle because this game they've won 5-1, but don't necessarily do great against the small teams. Jacob, I want to ask you about this actually because West Ham is a bit of a bogey team for Arsenal historically, and teams of the calibre of West Ham and London City Lionesses are the sort of ones where Arsenal have slipped up previously, but they've been much the better team in both games of convincing victories. Do you think they've sort of fixed this problem that they've had? Because they've struggled to break down low blocks for the last few years, and now they're scoring 5 goals.
Yeah, I think so. I think the kind of free-flowing and scoring lots of goals is very synonymous with René's Arsenal team. Looking at the stats from last season, Arsenal scored 4 plus goals in 10 of their WSL games. That's nearly half. And already this season, they scored 9 goals in their 2 games. So that's 4 in matchday 1 and 5 in matchday 2. And Arsenal only failed to score in 1 WSL game last season. That was a 1-0 loss to Chelsea. I think the only slight concern from an Arsenal perspective is that they have gone 1-0 down in both games this season. But I think looking at both of those goals that they've conceded, I wouldn't be too worried because they conceded a penalty against London City Lionesses and a free cone goal against West Ham. But I think it was just Arsenal dominance after that, especially in the second half. And I think it was amazing to see Alessia Russo be so clinical, but also be really good creatively as well. Not only did she get the 2 goals and the assist, but also for the equaliser, she played a wonderful ball into Mead, who played Marneman for Arsenal's equaliser. And then it just showed Alessia Russo's confidence with her first, but Arsenal's fourth, firing into the top corner. I think there's a lot of positives to take out of this game for Arsenal. I think one thing, especially, is their strength and depth. I think this shows, especially through their wingers, because in match day 1, Arsenal started both Olivia Smith and Chloe Kelly. And then in match day 2, they started Beth Mead and Caitlin Ford. And then obviously Olivia Smith came off the bench against West Ham and got the assist for Russo's goal, but then also won the penalty for Russo's second. So I think there's a lot of strength and a lot of positives to take out from an Arsenal attacking perspective.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point as well on the sort of rotation that we're seeing at Arsenal now, because we coined Bon Pastor bingo last season, but the I don't know what to call the René's, but the René roundabout, something like that. René roulette, I guess. Yeah, we don't know who's going to come on. Makes it quite difficult for Ariel Fancy, and something I've been caught out with this week. But we'll come to that a bit later on. Let's move over to Sunday's game, starting at Villa Park. Aston Villa 1, Chelsea 3. Aggie Beaver-Jones opening the scoring before Ebony Salmon equalised for the hosts. Missy Kearns, quite an unfortunate own goal from her, but Chelsea ahead 10 minutes after half-time. And then the big story of the weekend, Sam Kerr, her first game for 634 days after being out injured, scored her 100th Chelsea goal to make it 3-1, ironically, in injury time. Chelsea have now won all 15 of their meetings against Aston Villa, and yeah, they've definitely got a a bit of a hold against Villa in recent times. Well, not just in recent times, to be fair, in all times, because they're doing so well against them. Jacob, I'm going to come to you first in this game because I noticed something quite interesting in the stats, because it kind of seems like business as usual for Chelsea, that they beat Man City last week in a game where they overachieved on their XG, and then this week they weren't, they didn't thrash Villa, but they were the better team, and again sort of deserved their win on XG. But that's now 2.9 XG conceded in just 2 games for the side that have gone unbeaten now for 24 games in the WSL. Do you think this is a worry? Do you think it's going to continue, this sort of the amount of chances they're conceding? Or is it just that these City and Villa games are anomalies?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to judge trends from 2 games, but it definitely is slightly concerning. Again, looking at kind of the stats from last season, Chelsea conceded 19.2 XG against them all season last season, and they only conceded over 1.4 XG 4 times, and in both games this season they've already done that. So I think, again, not too dissimilar to Arsenal. I just looking at the goals that they've conceded. The goal against Villa was an Ebony Salmon screamer that was 0.06 XG. And then against City, the goal they conceded was a Niamh Charles own goal. So again, in terms of goals conceded, I'm not sure I'd be worried about that. But in terms of chances that they're giving up, especially in that first half against Villa, there perhaps is cause for concern. In the first half, the XG was very even, 0.7 XG for Villa versus Chelsea's 0.73. And that's 7 Villa shots to Chelsea's 2 in the first half. So it really was Villa dominant. I have to shout out Ebony Salmon because she had such a strong end to last season, especially in that 5-game win streak from Villa to end the season. And it was a fantastic goal to equalise for Villa. She had 6 shots all game, which was a match high. And then it was very unfortunate from Villa that they didn't get something out of the game, because I thought all 3 Chelsea goals were actually quite poor quality. That first goal from Beaver Jones, it was not the best Villa defending, and Ike Beaver Jones had a tap in to head home. The second goal was obviously very unfortunate for Missy Kearns. That Kirrell shot was going wide, and then a slight deflection just took it in. And then the third goal, obviously amazing to see Sam Kerr score, but it was a mess in the box from a set piece, and then Sam Kerr was just the quickest to react. So I think Villa will be very disappointed not to get something out of the game, considering A, the first half they had, and B, the goals they conceded.
Yeah, I think Villa, like you mentioned, the first half was so much, they put such a better fight up. It was almost like that game last season when they only lost 1-0, and it was, it almost looked like Villa were going to take the victory in that game. But Chelsea subs at half-time, Baltimore Cuthbert and, Alicia Thompson, we know the quality she's got, coming on in the second half meant that they had about triple the XG of Villa in that second half. So very much deserved in the end, I guess, for Chelsea. But a bitter pill to swallow for Villa. That Salmon goal actually ends Villa's run of 6 games against Chelsea without a goal. The last time they scored against Chelsea was Rachel Daly back in October 2022, so almost 3 years ago. Again, actually in a 3-1 loss. Izzy, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about Ebony Salmon, because I am adamant that she is the women's football version of Olivier Giroud, because she only ever seems to score bangers. And if you, in 50 years' time, showed a kid a highlight reel of Ebony Salmon, they would think that she was a Ballon d'Or winner.
Yeah, 100%. And I always, anytime anyone mentions Ebony Salmon, I always think back to maybe when it must have been like I was even first watching the Women's Super League, and she was at where was she? She was at the Dash, I think, in NWSL, and she came over to Villa. And I remember there was so much hype. I'd seen her play like 1-2 times and just thought, this girl's the future. She's going to be in the England team, like all this kind of thing. And she just, like, out of nowhere, she never made the team. She never, when she came on, she'd always come on like 70th, 80th minute and not really do much. But then every now and again, just when you're going to write her off, it's like banger, disappears, and then again, like, she's so unpredictable, but it feels like she's really starting to sort of cement herself, and maybe it's sort of new management and stuff at Villa, but I'm really excited to hopefully this will be the season where Ebony Salmon like actually properly gets her name sort of cemented in the history books, because she is so good. She is so good, and I love watching her play. And she has a great name. Like, it's everything you want.
Yeah, it's really nice when she does well, because when I'm trying to write my sort of intros and I need to insert some puns in there, Ebony and Salmon, I can work with both sides of that. You know, it's so much easier than some of the other names that we find around the WSL. But let's move on to one of the other games that was on Sunday midday. This one at the King Power, and I think one of potentially the most important games of the weekend. Leicester 1, Liverpool 0. It was the only match between the two teams that lost on the opening weekend, and these two teams had never produced a 0-0. However, do you know what? I actually could have gone to this game. Turns out I was supposed to be going to England cricket game, but it got rained off. So I could have gone to this game if it was rained off earlier, but I didn't know. But to be honest, it sounds like I dodged a bullet because it sounds very dull. It sounded like they were going to produce a 0-0, but it sort of took a bit of a turn the second half. Shannon O'Brien was showing a second yellow. From the video that I saw online, it looked like the tackle that she put in actually was all right. And then it was the sort of protesting to the referee after that got her the yellow card, which won't be something that the manager will be pleased with. But despite being down to 10, the host then took the lead through an Emily Van Egmond header. I think it was a good header, don't get me wrong, but it was awful defending from Liverpool. And it was one of only 2 shots that Leicester had all game. Liverpool in this game had 74% possession, made almost 4 times as many passes as Leicester, but couldn't convert it into a goal, and the game finished 1-0. And it means that Leicester get a clean sheet this season before Chelsea, Arsenal, or Man City. And yeah, a game that created a combined 0.72 XG. Definitely one for the purists, but definitely a really important game. Because, yeah, Izzy, I certainly, and I think I wasn't the only one, put Leicester as my sort of team to finish 12th this season. But could this be something that gives a bit of a change in the tide, and are Liverpool now favourites to finish in that bottom spot?
I will say no. And I say this because I think, to be honest, I don't, that foul, that Shannon O'Brien foul, it was not, it was, she was unlucky there. And then, obviously the protesting is not great, but I think had that not happened, Leicester would not have been sort of fired up to sort of push them forward. And we know Emily Van Egmond, she's great, she's got a lot of experience, and Leicester does have a lot of experienced players that they can kind of push their team forward in that moment. But like you say, I think it was more Liverpool's mistakes perhaps that kind of pushed Leicester to get that goal. I think Liverpool didn't play well at all, but they had sort of their new signing Olsen, I thought was quite good. She was showing like a little bit of threat at least. Annoyingly for me, she did not put anything away because I kept her on my fantasy team as a visionary. But yeah, no, she showed like some threat, and I think the thing is that Leicester still need to kind of prove that they have that full package, which I'm not convinced currently. I think they got carried through that game because they have a lot of experienced players, and also their team hasn't changed that much since last season. So they kind of are relying on, just that gel that they still have. But, they're under new management, interim management, like we don't know what's going to happen. So I think I personally would still put them to finish last unless, we see sort of consistent change. I think this was more a case of Liverpool conceding rather than Leicester winning.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think Liverpool, or one thing I've noticed, that this is now, they've conceded 5 goals this season from just 1.1 XG, which is obviously a horrendous sort of underperformance on Liverpool's side. Now, we were expecting Begraff, that was the keeper that came in over the summer. She seemed to start every friendly, and the season started and she wasn't there. Gareth Taylor said it was an internal issue. We haven't heard anything further. I'm not sort of suggesting that we speculate on anything, but I did see on X this week that someone making the point that she's changed her profile picture on Instagram. It's no longer got a Liverpool shirt in it. It's now her in a Germany shirt. So we don't know what's happening there. But that obviously means that they've got Kirby in goal, and she is obviously a much more inexperienced keeper. And Jacob, like we said, conceded 5 goals and just 1.1 xG. Could their sort of goalkeeper situation be a bit of a downfall for Liverpool this season? Will it make that much of a difference, or do you think Kirby will just get back up to scratch?
Yeah, I think so. I think just firstly, it's really disappointing from an aerial fantasy perspective that Borgraf has had these problems.
Yeah,
it's just
agree.
She was shooed in to be an unbelievable 4 million pick, and I know so many people, including myself, who picked her. But no, I think speaking on Liverpool, not aerial fantasy. Yes, I think that this does raise bigger problems. I think, Sam, the point you made about the kind of goals conceded from low XG, I was going to make the exact same point. Like, Everton scored 4 goals from 1 XG. Obviously, Vignola last week was clinical, but Vignola scoring 3 goals from 0.25 XG obviously suggests both kind of defensive and goalkeeping problems, and then Leicester scoring 1 from 0.2 XG. We obviously saw Rachel Laws playing goal for Liverpool last season, and now Faye Kirby come in this season for the first 2 games. So yeah, I think it's always a bit unsettling when you have kind of like internal issues. So I think the quicker Liverpool can sort it out, the better. I think another disappointing thing from a Liverpool perspective is they've just played both Everton and Leicester, who are teams that might be in and around them come the end of the season. And I think these are the kind of games where you need to get results. So I think they'll be disappointed with 2 losses. They do have Villa and London City Lionesses in the next 2. So I think that offers a big opportunity for them to get points. And if they don't in those 2 games, then it starts to get worrying as their fixtures will get harder. And especially considering that Leicester red card on, I think it was just before the hour mark, I think they'll be so disappointed not to push on and win the game. And the fact that they've lost it is, worrying. They only had 3 shots after the red card, accumulated 0.18 XG. There was a Kirsty McLean shot towards the back end of the game, which curled wide, but it was a bit more speculative than a close chance. But it's a big win for Leicester, especially when you're playing a team that could be close to you come May.
Yeah, I think Liverpool were one of those teams that I was sort of banking on a little bit with Aero Fantasy at the start of the season because they had quite a good run, but have quickly diverted away from that. Let's move on to the last midday game on Sunday. Although before we get into it, it was London City Lionesses 1, Man United 5. Before we get into it, we heard from the other regular who can't be here tonight, unfortunately, Tom Marr, who was at the game, and this is what he had to say.
Hello, Decoding the WSL fans. It's regular contributor Tom Marr here. I'm talking to you from the lovely surroundings of Bromley, where London City Lionesses were beaten 5-1 by Manchester United today. Just heard from both managers, Jocelyn Pressure and Mark Skinner, about the game. It was a really exciting build up to the game. They really did well in creating the atmosphere at Hayes Lane today, a fireworks display before the match, a bit of spoken word poetry as well. It was a pretty thrilling crescendo before this midday kickoff. The big news beforehand was that Grasqueoro had made the bench. And also on the United bench was Friedhelm Rolfo. Elizabeth Turland was dropped, but it was not a real drop. It was more of a, we need to rest you. And Mark Skinner said after the game that it was a bit of a, let's shock them, give them something they're not going to expect. For London City Lionesses, they dropped Elena Nenari, which was probably the big news beforehand, and Lucia Corrales started, the 19-year-old midfielder who they signed for a whopping fee in the summer, also started. Of course, it was Katie Zellem returning to her old club. She got the start as well, returned to play her old club. She got the start as well. Within minutes, the electric atmosphere that had been created pre-game was punctured when United got a penalty for an obvious foul from Yana Fernandez on Melvin Mallard, United captain, who was making a 100th appearance, scored from the spot. Mark Guinness said after the game that he had to tell her it was her 100th appearance. That's how much she just gets on with it, loves playing football, which I thought was quite nice. United doubled their lead through Jaden Riviere not long after a really brilliant finish from a tight angle after London City had actually responded quite well, had a few chances of their own. And then obviously we had half time, and in the second half it kind of got worse for London City United. It's London City United pressed forward. Melvin Mallard scored a brace before the 50th minute. She was exceptional, as was Jess Park as well, who got United's fifth. But only after London City Lioness had pulled one back with the ever exceptional Kosovare Aslani crossing the ball into the back post, and where Nikita Paris was lurking against her old club, which she tends to be most weekends, playing up against her old club, but fantastic player. And yeah, that was kind of how it rounded out. Obviously, we saw Freelina Rolfo and Grasqueoro come off the bench. Grasqueoro really seemed to make London City a lot more solid. I thought they looked a lot better with her on the pitch. Jocelyn Pressure said after the game that he thinks that she's one of the best midfielders in the world, and I tend to agree with him on that. So yeah, and Mark Skinner was delighted for Freelina Rolfo as well to come back and play. And it's a big week for United. Obviously, they've got Bran on Thursday, second leg after they'd lost 1-0. So this was really important to come back and win this game, which they did, of course. And now they've got obviously a big game against Bran on Thursday at Leigh Sports Village where they have to win, trailing by a goal. And obviously on Sunday, it's the visit of Arsenal, first versus second in the league. So that'll be very interesting. Keep a keen eye on that one. Final note would be that Millie Turner went down injured. It was in what looked like a really concerning injury. So really hope for the best for her. It was her first start for a long time after that injury at the end of last season. So we really hope it's not that serious. She had to be stretchered off, and she was in a leg brace at the end of the game. So really hope makes a speedy recovery.
Yeah, so that is what Tom had to say about the game. I thought it was really impressive display from Manchester United in this game, with Elizabeth Turner benched as well, which, not to go back to aerial fantasy too much, but that did ruin my day. She's probably being rested for Brand in midweek. But Melvin Mallard deputised really well, scored scored with her only 2 shots on target in the game within 4 minutes of each other as well. Jess Park thought also had a really good game, goal and an assist in her first league start for Man United. We noticed in this game as well that Millie Turner started alongside Marla Tissier, and this isn't something that we've really seen much from Mark Skinner. He's very much the manager that likes to keep his team exactly how it is, doesn't really like to use many players throughout the season. But Izzy, do you think there's going to be a bit of rotation around that position? Because I know he's rotating the squad a little bit with the games against Brand coming up. But I thought that rotating around in centre-back wasn't really a position I was expecting him to move people around.
Yeah, I think, like you say, notoriously did not rotate last season, and perhaps especially at the moment with the qualifiers for the next stage of the Champions League and things coming up. I mean, it's very clear that he has ambitions for United to be at least top 3 again this season, and maybe he's sort of in that sense wanting to rotate a bit more in every position perhaps, and I think he has the squad to do that. And I think bringing in Jess Park is actually was a very smart move, and I think she's going to do a lot, which allows someone like Janssen to sort of move back a little bit and just gives a bit more freedom. Obviously, up front, they're sort of absolutely fine, clearly, for goals and things like that. So I think it's not maybe something I expected, but I think it's probably a smart move because, also like Myla Tissier, she's amazing, but if they're going to really seriously compete for, domestic and international competitions, like she needs to not be playing every single minute as well. So there's that sort of element to it. So yeah, I think that's possibly the thought process behind that. And obviously they had Bran earlier in the week, and then playing a team like London City Lionesses, maybe he thought this is a good opportunity to kind of test that out, and clearly it worked.
Yeah, I think it was the right thing to do as well, because London City Lionesses aren't looking... I know it's going to take a bit of time for them to get that cohesion, but they aren't looking like a very good side at the moment. They're not looking like they're defensively solid. Obviously, they're conceding a lot of goals. Yes, 9 goals in 2 games is really bad. We should also consider that it's against Arsenal and Man United, who are 2 of the better teams in the league. But Jacob, at what point will we have to say, like, if London City keep losing, at what point do we have to say that this is actually too far? Because if we look at their games before the international break are Everton, Man City, Liverpool and West Ham. So aside from maybe Man City, they'd be hoping to pick up some points there, especially with Liverpool and West Ham being home games for them. And then after the break, well, their first one back is Chelsea, so maybe they won't pick up any points in that one. But yeah, at what point, because they're not looking great at the moment, how long do you think it's going to take them to actually get their first points on the board? And if they keep losing, at what point do we have to just sort of write them off?
Yeah, I think probably what you just said, those like next 4 games of Everton, City, Liverpool and West Ham, by that point you're 6 games into the season, you're maybe just over a quarter of the way through the season, and then you can probably start judging them. I think it's very harsh to make any sort of conclusions. Firstly, as you said, because their first 2 games have been against United and Arsenal. But secondly, obviously, there's been so many new players coming into London City Lionesses. So they obviously need time to gel. I think although it was a 5-1 loss against United, I think London City Lionesses can maybe feel a bit hard done by the scoreline. They did have 1.7 XG to United's 2.5. They did actually have more shots than Man United. That's 13 shots to 11. And Lotte Lindström had 0.8 XG. She missed a 0.5 XG chance, and she accumulated the second most XG in the game. And we also saw, although the game was gone at that point, London City Lionesses' goal was a moment of quality. Aslani crossing it in to Nikita Paris, who headed it in. I really liked a stat that I think it was the WSL that posted about Nikita Paris being the second player to score for 6 different teams in the WSL, which is very impressive, and obviously scoring against her former team in Man United. But yeah, I think it needs London City Lionesses definitely need more time before making judgment, and especially that next game against Everton. Obviously, Everton were very good in match day 1, but after losing to Spurs in match day 2, that it presents a chance for London City Lionesses to perhaps get something out of the game.
Yeah, we'll see how they fare in those next few games for the international break. They have got a match against Palace in the League Cup in that time as well, which, obviously Palace are one of the better teams in WSL 2, but they are still a league below. So we'll see if that's maybe one that they can use as a bit of a morale booster and get a win there. Move on to the final game. I'm sure the one that Jacob's been waiting for the most anyway is Everton 0, Spurs 2. This one was Sunday afternoon at Goodison Park. The only match between 2 teams that won on the opening weekend. Olga Atinen opened the scoring just before the half-hour mark. A goal that I really enjoyed as someone that really likes the sort of tactical side of the game. She won the ball back with sort of Spurs' high pressure, played a 1-2 with Tandberg before coolly slotting home. Really nice finish as well. Tandberg then got on the score sheet herself in the second half, which I think with a goal that's probably the goal of the season so far, scoring from about 40 yards out. The shot only had 0.02 XG, so only one in about 50 went in. I know there will be people saying, oh, what about Jade Riviere's goal? Because that was a fantastic goal as well. If you watch her, that is a cross. I'm not allowing that to be goal of the season. Tandberg's getting it at the moment. But this game is the first one, the end of a run of 5 WSL meetings where both teams have scored. Spurs have finally kept Everton out. And as I mentioned right at the start, it's the first time that Spurs have won away at Everton in any competition. So, Jacob, Martin Ho, but I guess he's Martin Holy one for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned as a Spurs fan over the years to reserve judgment, but no, there's a lot
That's
of
a big but.
but I don't want to get too excited. But no, there's a lot of excitement to take, especially from this game. I think I was very reserved going into the season because off the back of an 11th place finish with a new manager, and we really didn't strengthen that much, it seemed like, in the transfer window. I mean, both Toka Koga and Katinka Tandberg have looked really good in the first couple of weeks, but I was just a bit nervous for the fact that we'd only signed 2 players and for a team that had finished 11th. And although we did win last week as well, I thought we lacked a lot of creativity. Obviously, Beth England scored the penalty at the end, but we only created 0.27 XG last week. So for a team that struggled up front last season without Beth England, like bar Beth England, sorry, I was just a bit worried about how we'd fare in attack. But going on to the weekend's game, it was really, really impressive. I thought we looked really good all across the pitch. Obviously, Tandberg will get the plaudits, and rightly so. She was absolutely fantastic, getting a goal and an assist, and the goal of that quality. I mean, it's one thing to kind of see it, another thing to try it, and then a final thing to execute it. I thought Beth England's press is always fantastic. She probably doesn't get enough credit because, well, strikers usually don't get enough credit for it, but Beth England always relentlessly presses, and it really paid off as she stole the ball from the defender. And Tandberg's audacious shot was 0.02 XG. So that's 1 in 50 shots from that position go in, which I thought was maybe a bit harsh. I think it's probably more unlikely than that, but that's what the XG says. I thought, Olga Atanen, again, great to see her get a goal. She didn't start last week. It was Olivia Holt, so it was great to see Atanen come into the team and score. And yeah, I mean, defensively, we were fantastic as well, which is not something that was synonymous with Spurs last season. We've now kept 2 clean sheets. Surprisingly, the only WSL team not to concede. We've matched our clean sheet record from last season, which was 2. And my favourite stat from the weekend was we've only faced 1 shot on target, which was the joint fewest faced by a team across their opening 2 games of the season, which is joint with City in 2016. The last thing on Spurs is 2 players that I've perhaps been critical of over the course of last season, which are Josephine Rybrink and Claire Hunt. I thought have been very, very impressive over the 2 games to start the season. Hunt has got the second most clearances this season with 15 so far, and I thought Rybrink put in a real shift at right back. And also you have to also take note that Spurs were missing both Ashley Neville and Molly Bartrip in defence, who have been like shoe-ins, and Molly Bartrip played every WSL minute last season. And then obviously Ella Morris is out with an ACL injury. The Bartrip and Neville ones are more short-term, hopefully. But I think it's encouraging that we don't have a fully fit squad and are still putting in performances like that.
I think it'll be really interesting when, especially Bartrip comes back, to see whether she actually goes in, because is she vice captain?
Yeah, she's vice captain.
Yeah, so it's a pretty big call to leave out your vice captain when she's like you say, played every minute last season and was probably one of Spurs' better players. But if things are already going well, if it's not broken, don't try and fix it. Izzy, I want to come to you on this final question before we move on. But at the start of the season, I probably actually touted Everton to be the best of the rest. But do you think it might be Spurs?
Maybe not best of the rest, but certainly a lot higher than I would have put them a few weeks ago. I think I can't add a lot more to what Jacob said other than, and I hate to say it, I was so impressed. I so enjoyed watching Spurs play this weekend. And I thought, as well as Spurs being good, Everton were very off their game. Pacheco, I don't know what was going on. She constantly seemed to shoot. She was crossing things in, but everything just kept kind of missing the mark. I didn't think they were communicating very well. They were losing the ball in the midfield all the time. And, maybe that was Spurs' press, but I think also they weren't playing like a confident team that just beat Liverpool at Anfield, So I was disappointed with Everton. I don't think this is a sign of, things to come. I think if anyone can make them pull their socks up, it's Brian Sorensen. So I'm still pretty confident. I think what Everton have done in terms of the last few years in the transfer window, I still think that's going to pay off this season. But I do think that Spurs are looking so much more cohesive. I think Tandberg is excellent, and like Jacob said, the defense is looking so much better. And so I think it's going to be a lot more of an interesting battle, hopefully for them. And I think as well, Martin Ho's just a lot more dynamic than we've seen Spurs managers before, and I think that also helps a lot. So yeah, I hate to say it, but excited to see what comes from them next.
Yeah, I might even start putting some Spurs players in my fantasy team. I watched the coverage of this game, and after the game, Martin Ho did quite a long interview on the pitch with I think it was Ellen White and Becky Glover, and he spoke really well. And I think sometimes you get the impression when managers or players do like post-match interviews, they sort of like, they've been told that they need to stand there for 3 minutes and talk, and as soon as they're done, they're like looking to get away and stuff. But he just didn't want to leave. He just stood there for the whole time. I think he probably stayed longer than he needed to, but he was really good speaker. I think Spurs had that last season with Villaham as well. I really liked him as a manager, but obviously the way that Martin Ho has started the season has been vast improvement for them. And yeah, for Spurs' sake, long may it continue. Let's move on to aerial fantasy now, because we have our Decoding the WSL League. Obviously, as mentioned before, whoever wins the league this season will get either a WSL shirt or 2 tickets to a WSL game of their choice. And last week we had joint first, and this week the same 2 people are joint first after getting the same score again. So Todd Gregory with Rodders Hours and JH with Sister Slagers are joint at the top with 155. The best team in game week 2 was David Inglis with his team DSJI. He got 89 points, and he is up to 3rd in the Decoding the WSL League as well. So it's tight at the top after 2 weeks. I'm very sad to say that I'm nowhere near the top. I've fallen a lot this week after I think I actually got lower than the average, which is not something I'm proud of. But rather than me talking about my team, I'll hand over to our fantasy expert, Izzy, to give us some stats from the weekend.
Yeah, I don't want to. I think I got about half the average, so I'm feeling so bitter.
Making me feel better.
Yeah, but I think I just wanted to talk a bit actually about visionaries, because obviously this is the first week that kind of comes into effect, and I thought it was quite interesting that the top 14 visionaries in terms of performance, bar one, were all from Spurs, Villa, and Leicester. So perhaps unsurprising given the results, but I think it's quite nice to see that, people like Ebony Salmon, visionary, obviously Tandberg, visionary, Sari Keys, the Leicester defender, I think. She got 9 points, not someone we've necessarily spoken about a lot in the context of either fantasy or kind of general game recap. So I think there was a lot to kind of go around, and for those who are kind of looking to target visionaries, I think, I personally, Tandberg went straight in my basket. Actually, while I was watching the game, I was like, no, straight in my basket, because I rate her, and I think even against a tougher team, she might create something. But yeah, so that's kind of one thing I wanted to highlight, because I thought that that was quite interesting. The only person from a sort of not those 3 teams that was sort of in the top 15 was Alba Fugino from Man City. But even then, she only scored 4 points, so it wasn't a huge haul. I think the huge haul this week was reserved for who I would call the usual suspects. So if you look at who scored the most this week, the top 4 are Alessia Russo, Milo Tissier, Melvin Mallard, and Jess Park. I think it's kind of was one of those weeks where it's just like trying to be clever didn't get you too far. I mean, I personally eliminated Smith and Russo from my team, and look where that got me. So I think it'll be an interesting one. We've got like Chelsea, United, and Arsenal all sort of playing each other relatively soon. So I'm interested from like a fantasy perspective, whether keeping those sort of usual suspects is actually going to pay off, or is it that kind of Tottenham, Leicester visionaries that are actually going to be the real winner? And I will not be giving advice on that because clearly I have no idea what I'm doing, but that's one to throw out for a moment of thought.
In our like preview show that will be in the next episode out, we will be having a look at like what players we're recommending for the next game week, but maybe just me and Jacob will do that one then.
Yeah, probably.
I will say as well, something that you said in there that I think is absolutely wild is you said that you'd put Tandberg in while the game was still going on. I think that is crazy. I'm very much a leave it until like Friday lunchtime, make sure no one got injured in midweek, make sure there's nothing in training, see if anything comes out like in the like the press conferences. I don't necessarily listen to the press conferences, but I follow. There's a few like fantasy accounts that on Twitter that will tell you who's unavailable and stuff. So that's very much my go-to. But we'll move on from.
I'm very impatient. I see it, I want it, I've got to have it.
Well, I'm thankful as well that I think enough about the WSL to actually change my fantasy team, because I didn't do it when the Premier League won this week. And ironically did far better in that one than I did in the WSL, but never mind. Let's move on to the other type of game that we like on this show. It is Know Your Stat. So, well, I was going to say the first time you two have played each other for a while, but it's because it's the first time Jacob's been on for a while, basically. But listener, if you don't know what this is basically a game of categories. So I'm going to give Izzy and Jacob a category. They're going to take it in turns naming something. And if they take too long, if they repeat an answer or give an incorrect answer, they are out. And whoever gives the most correct answers takes the round. There are 3 rounds, so first 2 rounds wins. I will say this week, there's sometimes in the sort of overall standings of Know Your Stat, there's a bit of a sort of something up for grabs. Jacob is guaranteed to finish second, and Izzy, you're guaranteed to finish third, no matter who wins and who loses. But Jacob, you'll be close to going first. You'll only be behind Tom on the number of rounds won. And Izzy, if you win, you'll only be behind Jacob because you played one more match than him. So all to play for, I guess, in the next time you play, depending on how it goes today. So we're going to start with Jacob. As you haven't been on for a while, you might be a bit out of practice. You can go first, and you can pick which round you want first. So do you want to do the one about passing? Do you want to do the one about touches, or do you want to do the mystery round?
I'll pick the mystery round, sure.
Okay, so for the mystery round, I went over to Soccer Donna yesterday and had a look at the most valuable players in the WSL. They do everything in euros, obviously. Factor in that in your mind, but I would like you to tell me any player in the WSL that, according to Soccer Donna, is worth at least 400,000 euros. This is a list of 46 players, and I will give you the help that on this list there is not a goalkeeper. Jacob, to go first.
Alyssa Thompson.
Alyssa Thompson is 12th on the list. 650,000.
Olivia Smith.
Olivia Smith is 29th on the list. 465.
Grace Gaoro.
Grace Gaoro is exactly 400,000, so she does just about make the cut. Oh, yeah. It's not necessarily if you've bought a player for that much, that's how much they're worth. It's based on how good they are and their age and stuff like
that. Russo.
Yeah, Alessia Russo is the most valuable player in the league, 1.2 million.
Bunny Shaw.
Bunny Shaw is 9th on the list.
Elizabeth Turland.
Turland is 11th on the list. Correct answer.
Aggie Beaver Jones.
Aggie Beaver Jones is, she's right at the top, 20th on the list, correct?
I'm going to go for Caldente.
Yeah, Caldente, number 2, €1 million she's worth.
Jeez.
Leah Williamson.
Leah Williamson's number 7, 750,000.
Loose. No. Don't take the answer. I don't want to give that answer.
You have to give me some kind of answer.
I'm going to go for Kira Walsh.
Kira Walsh is correct, 650,000.
Lauren Hemp.
Lauren Hemp's 3rd on the list. That's the top 3 done now.
Beth Mead.
Beth Mead, 425, just about on the list.
Katie McCabe.
Katie McCabe, 550, correct? You're doing a lot better with this than I thought you would, I'm not going to
lie. Let's go for Viv Miedemar.
Viv Miedemar, 425, just about, but correct.
Erin Cuthbert.
Erin Cuthbert is our first incorrect answer. She is 350,000. So, Izzy, if you can give me a correct answer here, you take the round.
I am going to go for Kat Macario.
Kat Macario at €625,000 is a correct answer and gives you round 1. I will say as well, you didn't get 2 of the players in the top 5. In fact, you didn't get 3 of the top 6, which were Chloe Kelly, Ella Toon, and Naomi Girma. They were ones that I thought you would have got. Maya Ramirez was also in the top 10, as was Lauren James. And there were other players like Celine Bizet, Grace Clinton, Frida Marnham, Emily Fox, Hannah Ridden-Connerid. Who else is on that list? Neve Charles, Marta Tissier, Sjurka Nuskun, Stina Blackstenius, Vika Captain. Yeah, a few that you didn't get, but a valiant effort. I think I wouldn't have got 8 or 7 like you two did, so well done. Izzy, you get to pick round 2. Would you like the one about passes or the one about touches?
Well, touches went horribly wrong for me last time, so I'm going to go passes.
I will tell you, it's not the same round as last week.
I don't care.
We're still going for passes. Okay, so I would like you to tell me any of the 32 players that have completed at least 8 progressive passes so far this season.
I'm starting, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Myla Tissier.
Myla Tissier. It's unfortunately a very early incorrect answer. She's completed 7.
Oh.
So Jacob, with one answer, you could take the round.
Alex Greenwood.
Alex Greenwood is 3rd most with 18. So Jacob takes round 1.
I just wanted it to go to 3, so...
Well, we're going to go to 3 anyway, just in case there's a clean sweep. But I like that you started that with, well, touches went so bad last week, so I'll go for another round, and then got one wrong straight away. No, to be fair, Letitia is an answer you would think would be up there. She was certainly up there last season, but the top 3, I'll just read out. Obviously, Alex Greenwood was 3rd, but joint 3rd with Jelena Kankovic. There's also Mariona Caldente and Emily Fox rounding out the top 3. They were 1st and 2nd. We'll move on to the final round then. This one's going to be Jacob to go first, and I would like you to tell me the 30 players that have taken the most touches in the attacking third so far this season in the WSL. So this is any player that's taken at least 33 touches in the attacking third. And there are 30 players on the list. Jacob to go first.
Mariona Caldente.
Yeah, number 1 with 82.
Alessia Russo.
Alessia Russo is 7th on the list.
Melvin Mallard.
Melby Mallard, correct, third on the list.
Elizabeth Turland.
Elizabeth Turland, after not starting this week, was a very bold one to go for. She is an incorrect answer, unfortunately. She is 21, 60th on the list. So that means Jacob takes round 3 and then takes the game.
Shocker.
2 rounds to 1. It's like
Shocker.
you're never away,
I
Jacob.
blanked, and I just, for some reason, had it in my head that she scored so many goals last time, but it must have been. But maybe I'm just maybe I'm wishful thinking at this point.
If she'd have started this
Yeah,
weekend,
no, I know,
probably
but
would
I
have
thought maybe I'd be risky because what have I got to lose?
been. Well, I'll
Quite
read
a
you
lot.
out the players. I'll read you out the players that were in the top 10 that you didn't get. So there was Cornelia Capox, Ella Toon, she was second, Emily Fox, Katie McCabe, Kirsten Kasperite, Lauren Hemp, Marie Herbinger. They were sort of the main ones that you could have got. There were players like Bunny Shaw, who was 16th on the list, and Ebony Salmon, who was 20th on the list, which surprised me, but there we go. That was it. So yeah, a win for Jacob after being away for a while. That must be pleasing for you.
Yeah, I'll take it. That feels like a bit of a like scrappy 2-1 win because I feel like that first round we both worked very hard, and then I've just got like 2 very easy rounds. But yeah, big win.
One to be proud of. And Izzy, you'll come back stronger next time, I'm sure.
That's what I say every week, Sam.
Well, you'll be pleased to know as well that Laura Howard isn't booked on the pod next week either.
Excellent.
But yeah, a few other little bits of housekeeping to just go over before we leave you today, listener. One is obviously to join the Decoding the WSL League on Aerial Fantasy. You can use the code Stats and Facts. As I mentioned earlier, there is a prize of first place. So although we are a couple of weeks in, it's still worth joining because you could get it. Plus, if you win any single game week, you do get a shout out on the pod. Something else that's very exciting is that we have a couple of copies of Football Manager to give away. Football Manager is being released on the 4th of November, and for the first time ever, it's going to have women's football in the game. They have very graciously given us some copies to give away, so we'll be doing some giveaways soon. Keep an eye out both on socials. Follow us at Decoding the WSL on Instagram, but also listen to the pod as well about how to get involved and how to potentially win. But yeah, other than that, thank you for tuning in to Decoding the WSL today. If you enjoyed the episode, of course, make sure to follow, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're not already, check out Decoding the WSL on YouTube. You can find all the podcasts there available to watch. You can see our beautiful faces as well as hearing our voices. And we're also now on Patreon. You can become a friend of the pod for £3 a month. And the money received all goes towards producing the podcast. And in the future, there will be extra benefits added in as well, which is also good. I will say as well, I've seen a few people go on and have signed up to that already, which is fantastic. And I will say that if you try and do it through the App Store on Apple, don't bother because you pay an extra £1.50 and all of that goes to Apple. So do it through the Patreon website or on Android. But yeah, other than that, thank you very much for joining us, listener. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Izzy. And we will speak to you at the next one.